We are following some sad breaking news. Veteran CBS newsman and former host of CBS Sunday Morning, Charles Osgood, has died at the age of 91. Osgood's family said he died today at his home in New Jersey from dementia. Osgood anchored the CBS Sunday Morning for more than 2 decades. In all, he spent a total of 45 years here at CBS News. He was also the host of the long-running radio program, The Osgood File. Joining us now over the phone is CBS Sunday Morning correspondent Mo Rocca. Mo, thanks so much for jumping on and talking to us a little bit about Charles Osgood's legacy. He spent his career both on the radio and television. Talk to us about, from your perspective, you also have so many different talents that you bring to the show and many other platforms. How was he able to connect with so many people in so many ways? Talk to us about his unique legacy.
Well, you know, I remember on his last broadcast, he shared with the viewers sort of what I think was a secret to his success and his connection with the viewers, which is that when he spoke to camera, he always imagined that he was speaking to his sister, to his kid sister, who he was very close to growing up. So he didn't speak loudly. He had an intimate connection to the camera and to the audience because it was like he was telling stories, sharing stories that he had with his sister. And, you know, our executive producer, Rand Morrison, once said about Charlie, he said, Charlie is the last great gentleman of broadcasting. And that always stuck in my head because he really was a gentleman in the best sense of the word. I remember he and I did a little musical act together at Birdland, a jazz club in New York City. And I went over on a Saturday morning to his apartment to rehearse, and it was like 10 a.m. or something, and before I knocked on the door, I could hear the strains of him singing Embrace Me, My Sweet Embraceable You, and you got the sense this is just something that Charlie Osgood did each morning, got up, put on a bathrobe, sat at the grand piano, and played Gershwin. So that's who he was.
That's such an incredible memory, and it also kind of sheds light on the ways in which Charles Osgood was able to bring just calm, peace, just something optimistic, something bright to even the most disturbing of news. And joining us here in studio is CBS News Chief Investigative Correspondent Jim Axelrod. Jim, just what Bo was talking about, I mean, even in breaking news, even in disturbing news, he always just seemed to do things differently and keep people calm.
Yeah.
What do you recall, and how does that talent come about?
Well, you know, just to echo what Mo was saying, there was a genius about Charlie in the sense that broadcasting is something that unfolds at the highest level if you do maintain that accessibility with the people you are broadcasting to. And so many people broadcasting, and in the era where Charlie Osgood really sort of was coming up, there was almost a formality.
Yeah.
You know, that broadcasting, that stentorian tone. And he was much more, as I say, accessible, but conversationable and approachable. I remember as I was starting out here at CBS, the fact that I was going to be doing something live with the great Charles Osgood was so intimidating, right? Like there were giants here, and he was certainly one of them. And talking to him was, how was I going to get a noun and a verb in the same sentence? Instead, and then you talk with him and you realize, wait a minute, this guy couldn't be more approachable, more conversational, more of someone that you just, as I say, accessible. And so it sort of was a good lesson to me that sort of helped shape and guide my approach as well, which is, just remember, you're always just communicating to the person next to you. And that was, as I say, something that was his genius.
I mean, I hear you say this, and to me, you are a great writer, somebody whose scripts I have studied, and I imagine that coming in, one of the things that he's remembered for was the writing, of course, and keeping sentences short, words short, just being direct.
Economy of language,
right.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, the verse. famously rhyming, especially in the Osgood files. Talk to us about just maybe other lessons that you might have learned.
Well, he was, to your point, he was musical in his approach. And I'm sure that patter of rhyme, which allowed him to, write some extraordinary verse, spoke to this overarching approach he had, which was economy of language. And there's a good lesson for anybody who's coming up and trying to develop a broadcast skill set and a philosophy that undergirds their writing style, and that is less is always more. Charles Osgood was a high priest of less is always more. And it made him not only effective as a broadcaster, but for young people in any organization, it's always easy if you can say, you know what, do it like he does it. Because that allows you to sort of fix in your mind as you're developing your own sense of how to communicate a model that works and is effective for really good reasons. So do it like he does. Do it like Charles Osgood did.
Now, I want to bring in Mo, because in just what you were talking about, Jim, it's the most memorable people in broadcasting or in television have just a diversity of skills. Most people don't come from that broadcast journalism background. He was an economist by study, a musician at heart, a poet, a songwriter. Mo, you too, and I'll tell you, I just saw you on stage at the Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me show in D.C. I was way up there in the audience hearing you make a very creative show, and yet, you're not a traditional correspondent, but you are part of a news magazine show of Sunday Morning. Talk to us about how Charles's diversity of talents, how his music also made the experience of viewing him, of listening him, so enriching.
Well, I think what he did as host of Sunday Morning is you felt like you were attending a show. He was sort of a showman, I think, with all those different talents that Jim and you and I have been discussing. And, writing, he would write that verse, those rhymes, and his sheer delight in it. It was almost like he was an impresario or something, and a word that sort of fits him, just the way that he dressed. He wasn't being costumed. I mean, this is stuff that he just embodied so organically. And there was also kind of an interesting combination of just, the warmth that Jim was describing, but also just a kind of propriety. I mean, all of us on camera, the three of us have the experience, I'm sure, because we get to hear from people on the street what they think of the show, because we're the ones that they're seeing, so they know to come up to us and I love that show. And a lot of the time what I get about Charlie is, from people that seem to appreciate the fact that he had a kind of propriety, that almost like a father figure. And I can tell you that when I was in his presence, I would sort of stand up straight. I wouldn't let shirt tails just hang out, because this is Charles Osgood. And, that's increasingly rare. I mean, stand up straight, son, this is Charles Osgood. So, not that there was anything ever severe about him, but he did things right. So you should do things right when you're in his presence.
I mean, and he also, as what you're talking about, that perhaps fatherly figure, he also voiced famously the book Horton Hears a Who, and loved participating and narrating children's books. There's something to that, too, in feeling that comfort from a storyteller.
Comfort.
Mo is making a really important point here. And that is that you need, as a broadcaster, to always be authentic, to understand who you are and not be something else. Now, think about it. Charles Osgood followed the great Charles Kuralt. And the temptation may have been, oh, my goodness, this is another giant. And while Charlie Osgood certainly was an established figure in his own right, imagine stepping into a job that somebody else's footprints were clearly in that landscape. But Charles Osgood could only be Charlie Osgood. And there's a lesson to broadcasters who are developing now, which is to understand who you are and communicate along those lines. Not try to be someone you're not, but double down on who you are once you understand that. Charles Osgood's record of success was grounded in this thorough understanding of who he was And he was probably incapable of deviating from that. And thank goodness who he was an embodiment of all these wonderful qualities, and not just the newsman, but the poet and the musician and the gentleman. And so when you wrap all of that up into a combination, he was smart enough to understand, hey, I can only be who I am. But if you do that right as a broadcaster, that's going to be a foundation for remarkable success.
Wow, that's such a good lesson. That's such an important lesson, and it comes from either experience, it comes from failure, it comes from really pursuing it out of passion. I hear from students, oftentimes young students who are starting off in college, should I study broadcast journalism? I always say no.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? You're gonna be taught to sound like everybody else. You're gonna be taught to write a story like everybody else. And humbly, I'll share in my professional experience, I feel like I've had to break what other people told me how to do out of the whole formula. How would you both say that Charles changed journalism, the future of journalism, and the path for young journalists? I'll start with you, Mo.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I think just quickly following up on the point that the both of you made, which is, for Charles to have followed in Charles Kurtz's footsteps, for anyone would have been hard enough. But to have the same name, I mean, the reign of the Charleses, I mean, like at least if his name, had been Lewis or something else, it would have been a little bit easier. But I mean, he was being compared to him so much at the beginning. So it really tells you something about Charlie Osgood's sense of self, that he could pull that off and so quickly make the show his own. I think, listen, I'm somebody, and I know it's maybe non-traditional, but I think that television journalists, there is something performative about it, and because otherwise it's going to be uninteresting to watch, and that doesn't mean that it's inauthentic. It's acting, but it's a kind of communication, and so he just had this sort of, as we've said, very, very warm quality that I think was rare amongst. I think probably the temptation in his era was for journalists, to be gruffer or to be more just the facts man, which is important. But he imbued it with this kind of warmth that I think was, I don't know who else had that.
Well, he was certainly unique and adopted his middle name as his last name, as there was another Charles Wood already in television. That tells you just that, how he had to, just decided to be his own person. Jim, tell us perhaps what you remember, what you want people to take away from his legacy. Just a final thought from you before we go back to this election coverage.
Yeah, I do think for young journalists starting out, if you want to find people to study, what you're studying when you study Charles Osgood is a man who always looked for the story, the narrative. Mo just made a really interesting point about just the facts, ma'am type reporting. It's always easy. Good diggers of facts are always going to work. But if you want to elevate your work to something special, find the story that those facts knit together. Dig the narrative out, and then tell that in as few words as possible, and you'll be sort of walking the same path that Charles Osgood did such a elegant and remarkable job navigating over the course of his very long and distinguished career here at CBS News.
Well, Jim Axelrod, Mo Rocca, thank you both so much for joining us, for making the time and for honoring his legacy. Appreciate it.
I'm happy to talk to you both. Thank you.
Thank you.